أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر والملائكة والكتاب والنبيين وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين وفي الرقاب وأقام الصلاة وآتى الزكاة والموفون بعهدهم إذا عاهدوا والصابرين في البأساء والضراء وحين البأس أولئك الذين صدقوا وأولئك هم المتقون اللهم اجعلنا من المتقين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي آمين يا رب العالمين ثم أما بعد. Once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So inshallah now we're going to talk about the rest of the definition of goodness beyond belief. I want you to think of our faith and our belief like a foundation in a building. And the foundation of a building is underground, you don't really see it. But the deeper your foundation is, the better you can build a tall building, right? So the idea of our faith, because nobody can see our faith. You don't know what I truly believe. I can only speak about it, but at the end of the day, what's lying deep down inside my heart is only between me and Allah. That needs to be deep and rooted, properly rooted. Then you can talk about the rest of the goodness. So Allah properly talked about faith first and what it's supposed to be rooted in first. And now He's going to talk about what comes next in terms of goodness. And He says, وَآتَى الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ. And this person, first of all, they believed in Allah, the last day, the angels, the book, and the prophets. And then he gave wealth. This person gave wealth عَلَى حُبِّهِ, despite their love of wealth. عَلَى حُبِّهِ. Now this means two things. Ala hubbihi, that part of the ayah has been explained in a number of ways. At least two you need to know. One, you love money. It's not easy to give. And even though you don't want to give away your money, you still give it away. Even though you have a love for it. That's one meaning. The second meaning is based on their love for Allah they gave. Meaning their love for Allah was so strong, or their love for becoming good was so strong that they gave. They understood that they have to fight the greed inside of themselves. There's this thing inside of us, this greed. If you let it go unchecked, it takes all the goodness away from you. It's toxic. Our greed is toxic and it has to be controlled. And the way to control it is by giving. When you give, it heals you on the inside. It takes away some of that greed. It releases that from you and it makes you normal again. So the more charitable you are, the better chances you are of maintaining a good character, being a good person. The more giving you are. So if you notice you're becoming meaner, you notice you're becoming greedier, you've noticed you're becoming angrier, like the goodness of you is, you're becoming less and less good. You're noticing that in yourself, then become more charitable. You have to give up some of those things that you love. Then ala hubbihi also suggests that you only give the things that you actually love, which is explained in more detailed language elsewhere in the Quran. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You are not going to reach the goodness, you're never going to attain being good until you spend out of what you love. So there is, charity drive, and you're going to give your old smelly t-shirts away for charity, or you're going to give the new clothes that you just got for Eid. You have to give of what you love. And it's not just about money, it's other things too. Give the time, the best part of your time that you were going to use for yourself, you give that in sadaqah, you give that to a charitable cause, you give that to volunteer or help someone. You give of your wealth, your money, your clothes, your toys, whatever it is, you give. And this is a habit that you have to instill in yourself and also encourage your younger siblings to give, and to give to others. Like for Eid, a lot of the parents that are listening, for Eid, a good practice is not when you go out and, a few days before Eid, people go out shopping for Eid gifts and things like that. Take your kids with you and have them buy gifts for others. Just have them buy gifts, not just for themselves, for others. Instill this idea of them wanting to give others. And it's not easy, because as soon as they buy something for others, they say, so this Spider-Man, can I hold on to it until we give it? Or can we both have it? Or they'll have a negotiation process. And that's actually Allah, that's you learning about what Allah said. Allah said there's a love of what we have, right? And even children have it. And it's not easy for them to let go of something. Like even when you say, okay, now give it to your cousin, hand it over. They hand it over, but they're still holding on to it with both hands. And the cousin's yanking and they're still, yeah, I'm giving it. Hold on, I'm giving it. It's a process. I'm working through this, you know. So this is ala hubbihi. But who do you give to? It says, the ayah says, dhawil qurba, to those who possess closeness. Some translations say close relatives. But those who possess closeness could be relatives. It could be, you know, parents and children and cousins and siblings and all of that. But it could also be people who possess closeness to you as far as friends are concerned, acquaintances are concerned. People that are close to you that you know need help. You give. Just give. You know. And sometimes they don't ask. And you just have to figure out that they need and you give them. You know. You don't, especially people who you know, it's embarrassing for them to come and ask you. If they're in times of need, it's humiliating. So don't put them in that position. If they need help, just come forward and just give. And if they try and say, no, I promise I'll pay you back, just don't worry, just don't talk to me about that, leave it alone. Leave it alone. Just let it go. Because you're not giving it as a favor to them. You're actually doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it to kill the greed that you have inside of yourself. وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Whoever was protected from the greed that they have within themselves, you know, then those are successful people. You're doing this for yourself. So Islam teaches us that being charitable is actually selfish. You're doing it for yourself, you know. It's not, secondarily it's for someone else, but primarily it's for yourself. Now here also, interestingly enough, remember in Surah Al-Asr, I told you that half, the four conditions in Surah Al-Asr, 2 of them are about yourself and 2 of them are about other people, right? And this is actually a kind of tawasi bil haqq also. You are giving others, and you giving them is actually them helping you. Them helping you, and reminding you of the reality of wealth. I have this habit for myself, whenever I give some kind of sadaqah or check or whatever, I just remind myself, I write it on the check every time. Some words of the Prophet ﷺ. He says, مَا نَقَصَ مَالٌ مِّن صَدَقَةٍ. Wealth never goes down when you give charity. That's what the Prophet says. Wealth never goes down when you give charity. So, you have to convince yourself of this. You're writing a check, you're giving money, you're handing over cash, and you're convinced this did not take away from what you own. Allah never does that. He'll only give you more back. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يُوَفَّ إِلَيْكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تُظْلَمُونَ. Whatever out of good you give will be refunded back to you. It will be given back to you in full, and you will not be shortchanged. Subhanallah. Like Allah literally says that in the Quran. Whatever you give will be refunded back to you. This is an aspect of goodness. Now remember, when we think of a good person in Islam, usually, in our culture, a good Muslim, we think of someone who prays, someone who has a super big beard, someone who has like 8 hijabs on at the same time, or whatever. We think of people like, that have a certain look, right? They have a certain look. Or they have certain qualities, like they're super knowledgeable, and they're like always quoting like Quran and Hadith, or they're like, their recitation is amazing, or they're hafiz of Quran. We have this concept in our head of what it means to be a good person. The first thing Allah told us in this ayah about being a good person is what is in the foundation which nobody can see, which is our faith. Your faith is not something you wear on your face. It's not something you cover your head with. It's not what you dress with. It's not what you speak with. It is inside your heart. That's number one. The second biggest key that you have goodness in you that Allah mentions is what? That you give wealth. That you give wealth. Despite your own love of wealth. Despite your own love of wealth. You give it. And who do you give it to? People that are close to you. Because people that are close to you are also people that are the most annoying to you. They're also the hardest to deal with. They're also the least impressed. And they're also the least grateful. That's just the nature of them. So you're least motivated to give to them. As a matter of fact, when you're driving in your car with your siblings or whatever, and your brother in the back asks you for $1, whatever. You're driving and you see a homeless guy. What do? Here, have $1. You're not motivated. And you're not saying, when you said no to your brother, you didn't say, I'm going to wait for a homeless person and give it to them. I'd rather not give it to you. I'd rather give it to someone who needs more. It's not like that. Just because your brother's asking, your immediate natural response is what? No. Seriously? I'll give you? You understand? People that are close to us, we just say, come on. give someone else. But Allah is teaching us that you have to take care of the people close to you first. In the lesson on Tawasi bil Haqq, I told you the same thing. We have to be truthful and give counsel and seek counsel from which people? People that are closest to us. This is the same again. Give, but give to people that are closest to you. Now, after Dhawil Qurba, wal Yatama, and the orphans. The orphans. Now, this is a very serious problem. When we go to the masjid, do we know who the orphans are? No. We have no idea. Do they wear a sticker, a label or something? A badge that they're an orphan? We have no idea who the orphans are. How are you supposed to know who the orphans are? You can only know the orphans in your community if you know families in your community. And if you know a bunch of families, then you know who everybody is. So when somebody walks into the masjid, you're like, who's this kid? Where are they from? And you try to make acquaintances with people. That's the only way you're going to know who the orphans are. You understand? Back in the day, back in the Prophet's time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were there orphanages? No. But were there orphans? Yes. How would they be known? They were known because people understood that the masjid was a place to get to know other people, to get families to get to know each other, so we could know who the people of need are. In other words, we cannot live up to this ayah if we don't make an effort to get to know people. If you don't make an effort to get to know people, we're never going to know who the yatama are. Forget about this ayah. Because the people who are close to you, obviously, that's people you know. Now, obviously, you can say also al-yatama, the orphans within your family, and there are orphans within our family. We take care of them first. But even within our community, because they are in proximity of us. They are also closeness, if not closeness of family, they are in closeness of proximity. They live in the same neighborhood. They come to the same masjid. So we have to take care of them, and we have to give wealth to them. When you buy clothes, you find out who the orphans are in your community. When you're going and buying clothes for your children, buy the same outfit for the orphan in the neighborhood. And not just to send to some obscure place, which is good, but also in your own neighborhood. Wal yatama. Then Allah says, wal masakin. Masakin is an interesting word of the Arabic language. It comes from masaka and sakana. There's two roots that are together. I'll make that easy again. People that are stuck in poverty and can't help their situation. Like, for example, someone who's got a disability and can't find work. It's not like they can't find work because they don't want to work or they're lazy, but they're disabled. They can't find work. Somebody who's terminally ill. Some guy whose only job was he was a bus driver, but now he's got to have eye surgery. He can't drive anymore. He's stuck. He can't do anything else. There are people who get stuck in these kinds of situations. They're not beggars. They're not like, people that love being on welfare or anything like that, but they're just stuck in that situation. They can't help their situation. There are families, for example, there were families that was doing okay, and then all of a sudden the husband died, mother's left with 4 kids, and she can only work so much, and she has to take care of her kids also. They're very young also. She can't afford a babysitter. She's stuck. People like that are called masakin. People that are stuck in a situation, you have to, and by the way, how would we know they're stuck? Do they advertise themselves? Do they necessarily come out and say, hey, listen, I got a really bad situation? Isn't that embarrassing? Would you do that? Would I do that? Would we go outside the door of a masjid and say, listen, I lost my job, I need some help? How degrading is that? But we would know, if you knew families, if you knew friends, you would know who's lost a job, who got diagnosed with something, who's been in the hospital, whose family member died, etc., etc. So we would know the masakin. This is again, it goes back to knowing people. Wal masakin, wa ibn as-sabil. And then, interestingly enough, they call it in Arabic the son of the path. Literally, the son of the road or the path. But what that means is the traveler. The person who's been traveling, especially someone who's been traveling a long time. When people are traveling for a long time, they have the same old suitcase from back when, which means they don't have a lot of stuff with them, right? And they're new to a town. They don't have a place to stay. Nowadays, we have the hotel industry to try and take care of them. But actually, if we were really an Islamic society, then the hotel industry wouldn't do so well. Because people literally compete over, can this person stay at my house? Can they stay at my house? Because they're traveling. And this is actually a very powerful concept, taking care of travelers. What we do is, your friend calls you, hey, old friend, I'm coming over in a couple of weeks from Florida. Oh, you're coming over? How long are you coming over for? I'm going to be here for 2 weeks. Oh, 2 weeks. Let me get you the address of some local motels that might have some vacancies, you get so disturbed by the idea that people are going to come over to the house. As a matter of fact, you're supposed to go out of your way and be hospitable. Go out of your way and host and accommodate people. I'm actually really grateful to a lot of people that I don't get to see much anymore. When I started my career in Bayyina, I couldn't afford, when I used to teach the Arabic class, the 10-day Arabic class, I used to go to different cities, right? And I used to not be able to afford to stay in a hotel for 10 nights. I couldn't do it. So I had written a document that if a community wants me to come and teach a course for them, I can come for 10 days, but they'll have to find me a family who can host me, and I'd stay with that family. And I gave some like Shari'i conditions that, if the men are working in the day, then I don't want to be around the women in the house in the daytime, et cetera, if there's a section in the house or whatever. If you guys can do this sort of thing, it's crazy, but if you can do it, I'd be really grateful. And actually, as a matter of fact, there are communities all over the country where I used to stay. And I got to meet people and I stayed in their homes. It's crazy, but I did. I remember this one brother from Boston, Massachusetts. He got married, but his wife was still in India. He's like, yeah, you can come stay. I have an apartment. He didn't have any furniture. He had a couch. I stayed on his couch for 10 days. I still remember that couch. When I saw him after like 15 years, I saw him. I was like, hey, you still have the couch? He goes, yeah, still got the couch. My kids sleep on that couch. I was like, okay, I was your first kid, man. I was there before they were. I have a friend like that in Austin a few years ago. I taught the course in Austin. And he had an apartment right across the masjid. And he had literally zero furniture in his house. He emailed me and said, bring a bed sheet and a pillow when you come. And I literally stayed in one of his rooms, bed sheet and pillow. That's where I stayed. But the hospitality was extended by people. There were some very hospitable people. So, hey, just come stay. And I wasn't famous at the time. Nobody knew me at the time. I was just some guy who thinks he can teach Arabic, is going to come to our community. Whatever, just he could stay with us. No problem. But there are some people with wonderful hospitality. Just they really go out of your way to try to take care of you, And that's still around. That still exists. It's not dead. To me, I know that it's not dead. There are people still that do that. I can no longer do that. I actually can't go to people's houses anymore because weird things start happening nowadays. When I go to people's houses, I tried it one time. Like, please stay at our house. I was like, okay. Then I stay, and then they bring their iPad and Skype their cousin in Bangladesh, and he really wants to talk to you. And then they Skype their auntie in India. They really want to talk to you. And then they start taking selfies while I'm sleeping. And okay. All right. Okay. Hotel it is. So no longer do I stay in people's houses, unless they're friends, of course. Like close friends and things like that, because I know that weird situation won't happen. And the other weird thing that started happening is one city, they said, please stay at our house. I can't stay at your house. Okay, at least come to our house for lunch. Okay, I'll come to your house for lunch. All right, so I go and I find out that community had a huge fight because the family who invited me for lunch then shoved it in everybody else's face. He's coming to our house for lunch, not your house for lunch. What happened? And so now there are families that hate each other over the fact that I was like, okay, you know what? I can't come over to anybody's house for lunch. I don't know what crazy situation is going on in the background. I don't even know. That's the one I found out about, But generally speaking, hospitality is something we should try and extend. And it's an honor for us to get people to stay with us. We shouldn't think of that as a gift to them, but they're actually a gift to us. Okay, so this is Wabna Sabil, the one who's traveling. And by the way, Wabna Sabil is also strangers. It's not just family who's traveling, it's strangers too. You know what the resting house used to be back in the day for strangers traveling? Masjid. Drop your bags, chill out in the masjid. And to this day, actually, as I travel in the United States sometimes with friends, or when we travel as a family, you know what our stops are? Masjids. We just stop at a masjid, relax for a little bit. But back in the day, the masjid used to be a place where you would find people traveling and say, hey, why don't you come to my house and eat something? Why don't you come and stay over? And this is how it used to be back in the day. And inshallah, we can revive some of that culture. That's wabna sabil. وَالسَّائِلِينَ, and at the end, and those who ask. When we think of charity, who do we think of first? Those who ask. And Allah mentioned a whole list of people who don't even ask first. And then wasa'ilin. Why? Because we're supposed to be a culture of people. We're supposed to be the kind of family that gives so much that people don't even have to ask. That shouldn't even have to come. It's a last resort. Wasa'ilin. And beyond the sa'ilin, wafir riqab. Wafir riqab is people that are locked, whose necks are chained. Those people whose necks are chained. And what does that mean? That means people that were enslaved, that you free slaves back in the day. People that are imprisoned and you try to post bail for them and you try to get them out of jail. That's wafir riqab. Then you have people that are fir riqab, like people that are in debt. People that owe others a lot of money. And they can't get out of that debt. They've got student loans piled up. They've got home mortgages piled up. And they're just dying under them. They're also chained by something. And you try to help them out with their debt. This is also something you try and do. Which means you have to know what kinds of situations people are in again. Look at the ayah of goodness. Most of the time is being spent about caring about other people, isn't it? So much real estate of the ayah, so much space in the ayah, after you believe, is about how much you care about other people. One after another, after another, after another. Now at the end of all of this, Allah says, وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ. And He established prayer. This person established prayer. How many times we pray a day? 5 times. When we think of a good person, a good Muslim, what do we think of first? Number 1? Prayer. Is that number 1 in this list? No. First thing was your conviction, your beliefs, and where they come from. And as a result of your beliefs, how concerned you are about the people around you, and how much you give. How much money do you give? Despite your love of money, to how many different categories of people. And in addition to all of that, you pray. وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةِ وَآتَ الزَّكَاةِ. And He gave zakah. And zakah is supposed to be a charitable portion of your wealth. Does anybody know, for those who are applicable, like those who should be taxed zakat, what percentage of your wealth it's supposed to be? Do you know? 2.5%. And it's interesting, right, that Allah already talked about a whole bunch of charity before. Then He talked about prayer, and now He's talking about zakat again. You know what that means? That means that the previous categories that were mentioned, that wasn't about zakat. That wasn't about the legal minimum. That was actually about just you being a giving person all the time, above and beyond. And of course you give prayer, you make prayer and give zakat. Of course you do that. Now at this point, I have to share something with you, a concept, an idea that's really important for you guys to understand, because a lot of people are confused about it, and I don't want you to be confused about it. There are basically, in many cultures, there are 2 definitions of being good. There are 2 conflicting, 2 opposite definitions of being good. You could be religious good, or religiously good, or you could be morally good. Okay, now let me tell you the difference between religiously good and morally good. Religiously good means if it's a girl, she wears hijab, she takes a lot of Islamic classes, she memorizes Quran, she prays, all this stuff. Like it's a guy, he's got a beard, he dresses very traditionally, he does a lot of worship, he prays extra prayers, tahajjud and all of this other stuff. That is religious good. And make sure it's halal food. They check their meat every time. They go back to the cook and make sure that they see him slaughter the animal before they eat anything. Like they're super careful. They read the ingredients before they lick one lick of the ice cream, and then they check for every ingredient, and they do a master's in chemistry just so they can keep up with the halal ingredients and all of it. Like they're super religiously good. That's one kind of good. Then the other kind of good is what? A moral kind of good. They don't really pray, they don't really have beards or hijabs or whatever, but they're really nice people. They're nice to their neighbor, they're kind, they're courteous, they're respectful, they're honest, they're truthful. Good people. Really good people. And you know what happens over time is these 2 kinds of good, they become 2 groups of people. So you get one group of people who says, those people, look at them. They don't even have a beard. They don't even pray. They don't even have tajweed. They don't even recite Quran. They never even go to Hajj. They don't do this, they don't do that, they don't do the other. They're not any good. And then on the other side, you have people who say, look at those people. They have these hijabs and beards and recite Quran, but they're mean to their neighbor, and they don't take care of their family, and they're cheap, and they lie, and they steal, and they do all this stuff, but they go to Hajj every year. Oh, big whoop. In other words, you get 2 conflicting definitions of good. And one starts hating the other. One starts hating the other. An example of that, actually, in my mind, a real example of that is the country I come from, Pakistan. You actually have these 2 kinds of people. And they hate each other. They absolutely hate each other. I was invited one time to Interestingly enough, I was invited to the State Department for the Pakistan Embassy's Eid dinner. I was supposed to speak at the Eid dinner. There were dignitaries from the Pakistan military, the ambassador, some people from government. They were there. And of course, the United States State Department representatives were there. And it was an iftar thing 2 Ramadans ago. I can't remember if it was 2 Ramadans ago or last Ramadan. It's all a blur in my head. But anyway, so I go there and I'm supposed to speak before the iftar, right before Maghrib time. And I spoke, and afterwards I'm having conversations with some military folks and some dignitaries, some bureaucrats from Pakistan. I'm just engaging with them and having conversation with them. Very interesting conversations. The first thing they said is, "MashaAllah, you have a beard. You know, the Maulvis in Pakistan, they're a big problem. These people are some of the most corrupt." This guy went on for like 40 minutes, and his friends were like, we hate those guys. You know, because they're a big problem in our culture. These people that are religious, but they are at the same time so corrupt, and they use religion, they do their corruption in the name of religion. And you know what? What they're saying isn't entirely inaccurate. There's an element of truth in it. But is there an oversimplification? Is there a sweeping judgment of all? You see a guy with a beard and all of a sudden you start judging everything? You see a lady with a hijab and you start judging what she's all about? And on the other side, is there also a judgment about, oh, look at those people. Oh, that's the mustache club. Okay, yeah, all those guys. You know? Or those women, okay. You're those kinds of families. You're those kinds of families. We judge. We absolutely judge. Now this ayah is remarkable because when it began with something you cannot judge. What is that? Your faith, it's inside. Then the first thing it talked about is moral goodness. Moral goodness means you're good to people. Then it did not say you can only have moral goodness. You have to have moral goodness alongside religious goodness. What's the religious goodness in the ayah? Aqama as-salah wa ata az-zakah. Isn't that religious goodness? Who's concerned about prayer and zakat? The religious. The moral goodness, they care about charity, but they don't necessarily consider zakat. They just want to give charity. That's already been covered. So this ayah actually combined the moral and the religious forms of goodness into one and made them inseparable. And any Muslim who thinks that these two things are separable doesn't actually understand the Qur'an or the Qur'an's concept of being good. We're not supposed to have people with big beards that are mean, that don't care about their family or have anger issues. You're not supposed to have that. You're not supposed to have ladies that are learning a lot about Islam, but at the same time are so quick to become angry and judgmental, and you're not supposed to have that. You're supposed to have people that are good to others and good to Allah. That's what you're supposed to have. You know, and one doesn't negate the other. But when these two sides start drifting, they each become happy with what they have. كُلُّ حِزْبٍ بِمَا لَدَيْهِ فَرِحُونَ. Every party is happy with what they have. Every group is happy with what they have. We're perfect. We're already good. We already do what we, and most of the time people use their own false definition of goodness. They only use it to judge others. That's all they use it for. Which, by the way, is a very Israelite thing to do. To consider yourself superior and to think of yourself as better than someone else, which is the entire problem Allah has been highlighting all across Baqarah before He gets to this ayah of goodness. So now, وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَى الزَّكَاةَ. The other thing that you guys need to know, when you read the translation of the Qur'an, you'll find He established prayer and gave charity, gave zakat, right? This is actually a figure of speech of the Qur'an. It's a figure of speech. And you know what a figure of speech is, right? A figure of speech is a statement that means a lot more than what you see. It's a lot more than what you see, okay? It means there's something behind it. Establishing prayer and giving charity is the Qur'an's terminology for all of the laws of Islam. All of the laws of Islam are captured inside two things: establishing prayer and giving charity. Why? Because half the laws of Islam are about what you do for Allah, and the other half are what you do for people. Which one is for Allah? Prayer. Which one is for people? Charity. And at the end of the day, both of those benefit who? Yourself. That's the laws of Islam. All of the halal and haram, all of the things you're supposed to do is all captured inside aqama as-salah and ata zakah. And another way of looking at it, the Prophet ﷺ would tell us people, for example, whose salah is not accepted. People for salah you need intention, yes? You need purity, you need clean clothes, you need pure clothes, you need a pure place, you need to be consuming halal food, Because if you eat haram, then your prayer is no good. Okay? Which means that in order to establish prayer, you have to eat the right thing. Now to give zakah, you have to give zakah on your wealth. But your wealth has to be halal for you to give zakat on it. So the way you earn your money has to be halal. So everything about your religion gets covered inside salah and zakah. The whole thing gets covered. So it's a very brief statement, but it actually covers the entire spectrum of Islam. وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَ الزَّكَاةَ. Okay. Now Allah moves over and He talks about something larger. You'll notice, if you're Arabic students, you'll notice man amana singular, wa'ata singular, wa'aqama singular, and then also wa'ata zakah singular. But then you have wal mufuna. This is the first time Allah is using the plural. Goodness is manifest in the people who mufuna, they fulfill. The fulfillers of promises, wal mufuna bi'ahdihim, the fulfillers of promises, إِذَا عَاهَدُوا, whenever they make a mutual promise. Ahadu, not ahadu, ahadu. And ahadu is different from ahadu. I'll explain the difference. When two people make an agreement with each other and both understand what the other owes, then you have to fulfill the agreement. This is a very powerful word, because sometimes you think that somebody else made an agreement, but they have no idea that you're expecting something. The communication wasn't clear. That's a ahad. You promise something, but the other doesn't understand. Or they promise something and you don't understand. When both parties understand each other, that's called mu'ahada. That's the word that's used here, ahadu. The alif in ahadu, the extension, is there to make it mutual. In other words, you have to have clear communication when you agree to something. Which is why in Islam it's really, really important to be clear about what is expected of you and what you expect from others. You have to be a clear communicator. It's really important in Islam. Because you cannot fulfill your obligations if your obligations are not clear to you. If your expectations are not clear to you. And if they're not clear to you, you go seek a clarification, find out what is truly and clearly expected. Later on in the surah we're going to learn, especially when it comes to money and lending people money or giving them some charity or not charity, but lending people money, it's better to write it down. Why is it better to write it down? So it's clear. Both parties are clear. You know? I'll give you $20. Hey, can I have 20? I just want to go downstairs. Okay. I'll pay you back later. Okay. 2 days later I say, hey, didn't I give you $20? No, I thought you gave me 10. I thought you gave me 10. I could have sworn it was 10. And not because you're a crook, because you have bad memory. Because I really thought it was 10. Okay, fine, just take 20. And now in your head you're thinking, man, you just got $10 out of me. And I'm thinking, you just robbed me of $10. You see what I'm saying? You have to be clear. So the agreement on both sides needs to be clear. Now the other word, mufuna, the switch to the plural here is powerful. Why? Because we can only be a society that fulfills promises when all of us become serious about agreements. And this is a very powerful social reality. Let me explain. When in our culture it is okay for you to be late, for one person, 2 people, 3 people to be late, when it becomes okay, doesn't it become really hard for one person to be on time? Why? Because everybody else is okay with being late. You can only become a culture of fulfilling promises when you as a community, as a family, as a group at least decide, we at least are going to do things right. We're going to stick to times. We're going to fulfill our promises. I don't care what anybody else does. We're going to have to do it. And you can't just do it as one person. You at least need a couple of people around you. So the idea in the ayah is very powerful. Me as a company, my organization, my masjid, my family, my group of friends, we stick by certain principles, even if all of society isn't. And hopefully when we stick by them, a few more people will jump on, and we'll become a culture. Right? وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَهَدُوا. We have wedding invitations. Us Pakistanis, we love wedding invitations, really elaborate ones. Dinner starts at 8 p.m. sharp, it says. It should say, Insha'Allah. There's nothing sharp about that 8 p.m. Because when you get there at 8 p.m., what happens? The cleanup crew is still setting up the chairs. Nobody's there at 8 p.m. At 11 p.m., you're starting to think maybe we should eat. About 12 p.m., the guys show up with the food. You know? Isn't that normal? That's like standard. But what did the paper say? Dinner, start. You put it on paper that you're going to do this at this time sharp, which means you extended a promise. Now this became a religious problem. This became a religious problem. You are now a bad example. It's not just a party anymore. This is immoral. This is unethical. It's against goodness to create this habit. When this habit extends, people get a job, a contract, and you have somebody contracted with you, a Muslim contractor, who's going to work on your kitchen. Are you going to be there at 8 a.m. tomorrow? Yes, sir, I am. 8 a.m., inshallah. See you at 8 a.m. 10 a.m., you're giving him a call. Yeah, something happened. I was... Traffic. Okay, well, traffic didn't just get invented yesterday. Traffic's always been there. You said 8 a.m. Didn't you realize there was going to be traffic? You did. But you are okay with all of this because we're Muslims. In other words, the worst people who keep their time nowadays is who? The Muslims. And the ayah says Muslims are supposed to be constant in fulfilling their agreements whenever they make them. If you cannot make it, then وَإِلَّا فَقُلْ لَا. Just if you can't do it, just say no. تَسْتَرِحْ وَتُرِحْ بِهِ. You be at ease, other people will be at ease. Don't set expectations on people. The other side of it, the flip side of it, because I've actually been on both sides of this problem. In my early career, I did not fulfill agreements as I should have, and I've paid the price for it. And I've learned the lesson the hard way. I've had expectations from others who didn't fulfill their agreements. And that's been very disappointing. But the other part of this problem is when people assume that you have an agreement with them. And you don't. You don't have an agreement with them, but they assume. They overextend without clear communication. So somebody will come and say, brother, do you remember? I'll go to a convention. Brother, do you remember me? No. I met you last year at this convention. I said salam to you. There are 10,000 people at this convention. I have said salams to 9,000 of them. I'm sure I said salam to you. But I'm really sorry, I don't remember you. I hate that question. Because the answer is always, no, I don't remember. It's like, oh, you can't even remember? It's like, sorry, dude, I'm really sorry. I apologize. Then they'll say, last year, you said that you would come to our program. Really? I did? Yeah, you promised. Really? I promised I'll come to your program? What program is this? It's this youth program. It's happening in this place, this date, this date, this date. You promised us. Oh, good thing I recorded our conversation. Let me play it back for you. Brother, we have this program. It's a youth program. Do you love the youth? Yes, I do. Well, we have a youth program. Would you like to support it? Inshallah, if I can. See, you promised. Inshallah, if I can, is a promise? That's not a promise. That is, I'll see, if Allah wills. That's not a promise. But you know what? Some people hear that, and what do they turn it into? Promise. But you agreed. That's not clear communication. You cannot expect from people out of ambiguous, but I thought you agreed. No, I thought isn't good enough. You have to have absolutely crystal clear communications. What you expect from others and what is expected of you needs to be open and clear every time. And once it is, mufuna bi'adim. They fulfill it to the full. It is a religious obligation to fulfill it. You absolutely have to do it. And don't guilt people into doing things. And you shouldn't get guilted into doing things either. Some of you are volunteers at masjids or help out at a Sunday school. And they say, hey, could you get this? Could you get that? Could you get the napkins next time? Could you get this next? Okay, inshallah. And then you forget, I asked you to get the napkins. You didn't get them? You know, the ayah says they fulfill the promises whenever they make them. Want me to read it to you? وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا. I memorized that part just for you. You know what you need to do? You need to learn to say no. You need to learn to say, I can't. It's not the end of the world. People will make a face at you. You will not die. Really? You can't? Seriously, you can't? Yep, seriously, I cannot. I do it all the time. Feels great. Feels great. People, brother, we have this very important Islamic project. I'm sure you do. You need to be a part of it. I can't. Brother, don't you care about Islam? I do. But what about this Islamic project? I can't. Brother, seriously, you can't? We need you. I know. I can't. I have too many things I'm already involved in, and they are kind of Islamic also. And I'm sure your work is Islamic, but it's not my work, it's your work, and you have to do it, and I make dua for you. If I have the free time, if I have the ability, I can try and help, but right now I can't. I just can't. I have way too many commitments. I have way too many obligations. I can't. Astaghfirullah, brother, we thought you'd help Islam. You were wrong. Move on with life. Saying no is hard sometimes because people are really good at guilt tripping you. They're really good at making you feel bad, and you're like, oh, okay, fine. Don't do it. If you can't do it, don't do it. Do things because you want to and because you know you can, not because you feel guilty. Don't be guilted into stuff. I've been guilted into stuff a long time in my life. Now I have no shame left, no guilt left. So I just, no, I can't. It's all good, you know. And people will use the worst kinds of guilt trips. Oof, so good at it. I was spending 22 hours in Canada. Not 24, 22 hours. Flights in the morning at Fajr, after Fajr. I land there after a stop flight. I get driven straight to the Jummah khutbah. From Jummah khutbah, some lunch, maybe 30 minutes of kind of a shut-eye, then straight to a program from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., then people's questions until midnight, and a guy comes up to me and says, brother, can you come to our masjid for Fajr to give a talk to the youth? And I said, I can't. I have a flight right at Fajr. Brother, I know we're just a small masjid, and it's only going to be a few youth, and you're only used to doing programs for thousands of people, but please, it's the house of Allah. You should come. I can't. I understand that it's not a famous program and it's not going to be recorded for YouTube, but you should still try to come. I have children at home, and I'm going to catch that flight. I can't. Astaghfirullah, that's what I thought. He walks away. And I'm okay with that. I'm fine. I don't need to make that guy happy. I don't need to prove to him that I'm not doing this for the sake of fame or whatever. I don't have a heavy conscience that I need to clear and just go to him or go to that program just to prove to myself that I'm sincere or whatever. I don't have those issues. He's got the issues. I don't have the issues. It's okay. He can live with his issues. He should see a therapist later on. I'm going to catch my flight. I'm going to have breakfast with my kids. I'm cool. I'm fine. Don't get guilted. وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا. إِذَا عَاهَدُوا is important here. When you make a promise, you're stuck. When you made a promise, that's it. You got to give. You got to fulfill. But think a lot before you give in, before you make a promise. You know, you take your commitment seriously, which is why you don't overcommit, don't overextend, don't overpromise, and underdeliver. Don't do that. Okay? And if you do that in your life, you're going to pay not only religiously, in this life. In this life, there's lots of problems. People consider you unreliable. You're not going to have good professional references. People will not recommend you. If you have a business, it will not grow. If you have friends, they will not call on you, and which means you cannot call on them. You're going to miss out on a lot in life if you don't learn this lesson. Make commitments and stick with them, and don't make commitments that you know you can't stick with. Be comfortable with saying no. وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا وَالصَّابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ. And at the end of it all, Allah says وَالصَّابِرِينَ. And over and above everything else, the people who are persevering and patient and constant when it comes to times of conflict, al-ba'sa, times of conflict. In other words, there are tensions against Islam. There's social pressure that you should not live according to the establishing of prayer and giving zakah and giving to others and fulfilling your promises. There's social pressure for you to become like everyone else. These are times of ba'sa, times where there's tensions of war or tensions of conflict. وَالضَّرَّاء. And they still stay constant even when times of great difficulty come. Ad-darra is also referred to as economic difficulty. Times are, money's tough, you don't have a lot of money, the job is no longer there. You know, economically things are difficult, you're still a giving person, you're still a charitable person, you're still committed to Islam. You're still not going to earn money the haram way. You're going to stick with it. This is a sabirina fil ba'sa wal darra. And even sabirin heen al ba's, even in the middle of the battlefield, you're not going to run away from your commitments. Even if you're in the midst of battle, heen al ba's. Now notice the word as-sabirin ends with een, and al-mufun ends with un. This in at the end is actually there because that's why I translated it as over and above everything else. That's why that in is there at the end of as-sabirin. And this is important because all of the things that Allah described as good in this ayah, from our faith, to giving, to praying, to giving zakah, to fulfilling our promises, all of those things, if you're not steady and regular and constant with them, they amount to nothing. You remember the climax of everything in Surah Al-Asr was وَتَوَاصَوْا with what? The sabr. The climax of everything here is what? وَالصَّابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ. What was the first condition in Surah Al-Asr? إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Here, وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ. Then there we had وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Good deeds. Are there good deeds mentioned here? Yeah. وَآتَى الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ وَسَائِلِينَ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَى الزَّكَاةَ. Good deeds. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. They encourage each other, they counsel each other to the truth, just like they fulfill each other's promises here. وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا. And then there finally it ended, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And here, وَالصَّابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ. It's the same 4 lessons, isn't it? It's more details now, but it's the same 4. The foundation is the same as Surah Al-Asr. That's why this ayah is a further elaboration of what Allah already said in Surah Al-Asr. And look at how Allah ends at the end. He says, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا. Those are the people who've actually been truthful. These are truthful people. They prove to me that they're good. People who lived like this, who balanced all of these obligations. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ. And those are the people who actually were able to protect themselves. They were able to protect themselves. I'm not translating muttaqun as pious or righteous, like some of your translations say. I'm translating it as people who protect themselves. Because ittaqa in Arabic literally means to take protection for yourself. Now the question is then, protect yourself from what? You remember the beginning? How was goodness described? Like land. And if you're in danger when you're at sea. So if you've really been able to protect yourself, you're people of taqwa. That's why muttaqun at the end. The other just slight thing before I end that I didn't get to mention is something very beautiful about the angels, the book, and the prophets. Look at the angels, they're plural. Al-malaika, angels. Al-kitab is singular, the book. The prophets are plural again. The prophets are plural again. Do we believe in all the prophets? Yes. Do we believe in all the angels? Yes. But which book are we supposed to follow? Just the Quran. We can't follow all the books because they've been changed. They've been changed. The only book you follow is the one that's given to you. And if this ayah was about people that lived 2,000 years ago, then the only book they had at the time, the only book was Tawrat, then it's only Tawrat. It's not any other book they're obligated to follow. So whichever book came at the hands of a prophet, that's the book you're supposed to follow. For us, it's not all the books. It's which book? The Quran. So now Allah is saying, don't look for goodness in other books. Look for goodness in this book. Just one book, Al-Kitab. And through this book, you'll believe in all of the prophets anyway. All of the prophets, your beliefs will become correct. Okay, so this is a good overview of the contents of Ayatul Bir. Just once again, the purpose of sharing this ayah with you was to illustrate 2 things. One was the difference between moral goodness and religious goodness, and how both of them are combined in this ayah. The other purpose of it was that I want you to be clear, if you want to be considered good as far as Allah's definition of good, then you begin with what Allah begins with, your belief. Then you go to the goodness towards other people. Then your obligations to Allah Azza wa Jal. This is a matter of priority. Not timeline, like one day I'll be good to people, the next day I'll pray. Not like that. But in your head, like what's your priority? You're supposed to be really good to people around you first. First and foremost. And then if you can be good to those you see, then you can be good to the one you can't even see. That's Allah. Right? That's the progression of it. This is also a good way for you to understand as the course proceeds. When we get to the first section or the second section, which is Iman, alladhina amanu, we're going to have detailed discussions about how do you build that foundation. Because our entire foundation for goodness is going to be built on Iman. So we have to have that solid.